So, Kristen Turnbull, thanks very much for joining me for a chat today. Great to have you on. I'd just like to start with a little bit of an introduction to yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and a little bit about your work history?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan. So, Kristen Turnbull, I'm founding director of CoreData WA and deputy managing director of CoreData Group. My background, I started my career in journalism many moons ago, and I came across CoreData back in 2009 when I had sort of relocated from London to Sydney. And I was actually working in journalism over there, and I met with the founder of CoreData Group, Andrew Inwood, over a coffee to write about some research that CoreData had done. So CoreData is a market research consultancy. And at the end of that coffee chat, he actually ended up offering me a job. And I initially turned him down. I wasn't sure I was ready to leave the commercial world at that point, but it kept playing on my mind, and I was sort of at that point becoming a little bit disillusioned with the direction that journalism was going down with the sort of shift to digital. And so I went back to him and said, look, this is really interesting, let's chat. And so I ended up working in the Sydney office for about 5 years, looking after our financial services clients over there. And after we had our first daughter in 2013, I started to really feel the pull back to Perth. And so I said to Andrew, look, I'd love to keep working with CoreData, but I really feel like I want to move back to Perth. I don't really want to be a remote employee sitting over in Perth on my own. How about we turn this into an opportunity for both of us? So he was a little bit sceptical about the idea of setting up a business over here. I'm pretty sure he said something along the lines of, you may as well be moving to the moon. So it wasn't necessarily seen as a strategic market, but to his credit, he gave me a shot and gave me a year to build the client base. And in July 2017, we officially launched CoreData WA as a separate business entity. So the two hats I wear are director of this business here in Perth, and also that deputy MD hat for the broader group, which is really just a reflection of the leadership role that I play in the broader company as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And what would you say then have been some of the biggest challenges of starting up the business in a different geography from, I guess, where the main business was previously, working as a sort of more part of a distributed team?
Yeah, look, I think we always said from the outset that we wouldn't necessarily be geographically bound. So there was always the idea that while this was where we were based, there was no reason we couldn't service clients elsewhere in other markets if they had a need. And that we operate a shared resource model. So we'll bring in resources from our Sydney office and our Manila office as well in terms of analyst time when we need it. But I think probably COVID has really helped that or accelerated that shift in thinking, both in terms of our ability to work with clients outside of Perth. So we now have clients in Singapore and Canada and Sydney that we work with, but also from a company perspective. I mean, I used to do 4 trips to Sydney a year. I might now probably post-COVID do 1 to 2. I'm about to do my first one in a few years in July. So it's probably not been as challenging as you might think, in the sense that, I mean, obviously it's quite important that we set some boundaries around time and when you're going to be available. So I'm sure it's frustrating sometimes for Sydney waiting for WA to wake up and start the day. So, but we just book meetings in the afternoon Sydney time, morning Perth time, navigate those time zones. We make sure that, you know, if there's days when I'm on school drop off, then I'm not available for meetings before 9 a.m. We just communicate well. And obviously there's always exceptions where you need to jump on a call early morning or late at night. But yeah, just having those clear lines of communication really helps.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you use any asynchronous sort of tools or processes to manage sort of time zone differences?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of these kinds of calls on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And so, you know, I'm on a daily basis, I'll be chatting over Teams with our team in Manila. We have about 30 analysts based over there. And we try and use video calls as much as possible, particularly at sort of critical junctures in the projects where it's important that everyone's on the same page and that we have an actual conversation, rather than, there is the risk that sometimes things can get lost in translation when you're on email or kind of in a written format. So we do try and do calls as much as possible. It's also good for building kind of high trust relationships as well, and really getting to know people on that level. But then we do have a number of tools that we use in the business as well for just, I guess, communicating with each other and managing projects. So, for example, we'll use Trello is our key project management tool, so we can track how projects are progressing against timelines. It's also really useful. One of the challenges we found in the past was with various different people across different offices working on a project, not necessarily knowing where they'd got to on things. So we'll use Trello to post like an end of day update so everyone's aware, look, this is where I've got to and I'm going to continue in the morning, and, anticipate sending whatever it is across by midday. So just being really clear and transparent on that, using that forum in that way. We use Harvest as our time tracking tool, and that's important for the shared services model that we operate in terms of being able to correctly attribute time to officers, but also to projects as well. And then we use Confluence, which is kind of like our intranet or Wikipedia for the business. So we'll record all of our processes on there, but we'll also use it to document project briefs and just make sure, again, everyone's... Sorry, something just fell off the wall. Just making sure everyone's across the details, and that, particularly when a lot of the people that are working on the projects haven't necessarily taken the brief directly from the client, so they're not privy to the information that we might be. So we find those tools work really well. Obviously we've tried various different tools in the past, and that's those are the ones that we've landed on at the moment. But yeah, I think when you're dealing with multiple time zones, communication is so important, so you can never over communicate, in my view. Using multiple platforms to make sure the message gets through is really important.
Yep, 100%. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how it's been for you. So I suppose you've built a team yourself now in Perth, basically from scratch. So how has that been? And can you give us some insights on how you've thought about building your own team culture?
Yeah, sure. I think the interesting thing when you start a business is, the culture becomes kind of intrinsically linked to the founder. So I'm not sure that I necessarily had, designed a culture when I set out. It was more, I guess, the culture organically evolved from me as a person in terms of how I like to work and my experience of what makes a good workplace. So for me, it's really important that people have fun, that they're doing meaningful work, that they feel part of, I guess, a cohesive team, and that they're sort of working towards a common goal, but also that they have good work-life balance and flexibility, because for me, I couldn't do the role that I'm doing without that. So I really placed kind of a high degree of importance on making sure that people do have that balance, and understanding that, sometimes we might be asking them to do more than is reasonably expected, but likewise there'll be times when they'll need to come to me and say, Kristen, I really need some time. And so, there's ebbs and flows, and just making sure that first and foremost you're sort of human in the way that you approach the team and their needs. So yeah, look, I think I did take a bit of a steer from the group, from head office, because the way that CoreData has been established from the outset is really, it's definitely a meritocracy. So, you work hard, but you're rewarded in spades, and you're rewarded on merit. It's not about, face time or how long you've been with the company. It's really about what you're able to achieve. So very much outcomes focused. And I think if you have that outcomes focus, you don't necessarily worry about, it's not important where someone's doing the work from or whether they're doing 9 to 5. It just becomes, they're accountable for the job that they've been hired to do, and are they delivering on that? I think as well, some of the sort of values that we hold that I've really tried to instill in the team as well, you know, it's really important in the types of work we do for clients that people are curious. So you have to really have kind of that curiosity. You definitely need to be a self-starter. I think when I joined, I was very much thrown in the deep end, and it was a bit of a sink or swim scenario. I think we've become a lot more structured with the way we onboard and train people now, but that is, I guess, an example of a culture that really values self-starters and people with a growth mindset. So that's something that we place a lot of importance on, particularly when sort of the recruitment process, really, when looking for the right people to join the team.
That's a great lead into my next question, actually, which I was going to ask a little bit about, sort of how you think about recruiting the team. So how many people do you have in the team now?
So we've got 8 of us in the WA team. One of those is in Manila, and the rest of us are in Perth. But then obviously the team flexes up when we do bring in resources from Manila and Sydney, but that's the core. They're the core team.
Okay, and so I was going to ask then how you talked then about sort of obviously some aspects of personality, I suppose, or fit that you're looking for. How much emphasis when you're recruiting do you place on team and cultural fit versus skills and experience?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Look, I think recruitment's really hard, and I definitely am no expert, and I've definitely made mistakes in the past, but I think I've really learned that the team fit or the cultural fit is as important, if not more important, to me than the skills. I think you can train for skills. You can't really train for cultural fit, and you know, you might have a genius in your team, but if they're an absolute asshole and they, you know, annoy everyone around them, then it's not going to work out. So yeah, I place a lot of importance on cultural fit. I've used various approaches to recruitment, ranging from gut feel right through to putting people through technical tests, and we were for a while using the Big 4 personality test, which is a Jordan Peterson one. Not as a first pass, but almost like a final, you know, if I had a sense that this was someone that I thought would fit into the team, I'd sort of get them to do it just so I could get a bit of a high level sense check on what dynamics they might bring to the group, and how their personality might work in the types of environment we work in, where there's typically a lot of uncertainty, and you know, you need to kind of, often you're working in an environment where you need to kind of go out and find the answer yourself and do some digging. So so I found that test was really useful, and what it did show up actually is that the last time I did it with my team as a group, we're all really different. So I think that sort of divergent thought can be really an important part of the team, but obviously we've got to watch that you don't have too much of that. So I found that quite a useful tool, and I recall having a conversation with a good friend of mine after she attended an industry event where I was hosting a table, and she had an opportunity to meet a number of the team and had conversations with them that night. She said to me later on, "Kristen, you've really managed to hire people that are completely different to you." And to me, that was a really big compliment, because I think it's tempting sometimes to think, oh, I wish I could clone myself, you know, have more of my own time. But actually, you know, that was, I guess, validation for me that I had sort of effectively essentially hired to my weaknesses and tried to surround myself with people who thought differently and who had complementary skill sets. So yeah, I think culture is really critical.
Yeah, fantastic. And so then what do you do internally to sort of build that engagement and team spirit once you've got your team? How do you keep them engaged and happy at work?
Yeah, look, I think we're lucky in that the nature of the work we do means that you get an opportunity to work across kind of a diverse number of industries, and the tasks day to day can be really varied. So I think that really suits people who, you know, don't necessarily want to sit there and do the same thing every day. So there's diversity in the work, and the work we do is meaningful because it's kind of, it's making an impact in the organisations we work with. But I think, you know, celebrating the successes is an important part of it. So, you know, making sure that everyone has an opportunity where you do have a little win, that you have a way to celebrate that internally. So we do that, and we make sure we have sort of in-person opportunities for team bonding or team building, if you like, that don't involve work conversations, you know, whether that's end of financial year sort of get-togethers or Christmas lunches and drinks, and just spending time getting to know each other outside of a work context is important. And so, you know, I'm pleased that we've been able to get everyone back in the office. We work a hybrid model, so not full time, but I think it is a little bit more challenging when you're not getting that face time. So certainly I think for us what works is just having that mix and making sure that we are regularly spending time outside of work together and really getting to know each other and what drives us outside of work as well.
Yeah, great. So I just had one final question then to finish off, which was, do you have any books or podcasts or resources that you'd recommend to someone, something you've learned interesting about leading a team?
Yeah, look, there's loads. A couple that spring to mind. So there's one, I think, Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last is kind of one that resonates with me, just in terms of like that real central focus on well-being, and as I said, making sure you're really human-centric in the way that you deal with your team members. They're not a bum on a seat, they're a real person. You know, work is one part of their life, it's not the only part of their life. So I think, you know, fostering that culture where there is that kind of mutual respect and understanding of that really kind of drives that loyalty and kind of gets the best outcomes for people. So that one I enjoyed. I've just started listening recently to I Built This, the Guy Raz podcast, and I think it should be called We Built This, because, you know, if you listen to the stories of these entrepreneurs, what I found resonated was that, you know, really, like, there's no story that doesn't come with, you know, either some sort of generosity or kindness of someone who was willing to do something or help, and all those people that kind of joined the company in the early stages of its growth and really kind of stuck with it. And so I think it really kind of hammers home the importance of that team or that kind of network in any business. So I think that one I've really enjoyed, listening to the stories of you know, of the hustle and just of how they've kind of managed to oftentimes kind of bring people on board quite early in the journey and keep them motivated and keep them involved even as the business has grown and scaled up over time and become, you know, a super success story. So yeah, that's a couple.
It's a great podcast. I also listened to that one. So thanks so much. Great recommendations. All right, that's a wrap for the interview, but thanks so much for coming on and speaking with me today. And wish you all the best with CoreData Western Australia.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.